Today,
Toyota!
They're jumping for joy and dancing like fools all over the two FJs, Saggin' Wagon and the Cruiser. Be there for the trail ride. Plus, this Arizona trail is known for eating axles.
Another day at Xtreme and another truck pretty much ready for the trail. Well, actually today we're gonna have two trucks out on the trail.
That's right. Our old 85 Landcruiser and our new 07 Toyota FJ will both complete their transformation. This from a field find to a trail truck.
And that one from a mall crawler to a rock crawler.
Now to get you up to speed, here's what we've already done on our old 85. We started with a torn up, worn down FJ60 that we affectionately named the Saggin' Wagon. After performing a spring-over axle conversion on the front, we dove into this truck with a vengeance by completely gutting and back-halving the rear. Then designed and built a custom 4-link setup. We stuffed the axles with ARB air lockers and 529 Yukon gears for the ultimate in low-range selectable crawling. Then the entire truck was treated to a full roll cage, custom suspension seats, and a hydraulic assist high steer kit. Now today we're going to get under the truck so we can install a new clutch and go ahead and add some crawl to our transfer case thanks to a gear reduction box.
Now our 2007 FJ has undergone a less radical transformation, and it all started with a 6-inch Pro Comp suspension system that allows us to roll on these 35-inch Xtreme MT tires mounted on 17-inch Pro Comp beadlock wheels. Now instead of cutting the body in half, we chose to protect it, and we built a complete exo cage on the outside of this truck. Now if you're wondering why it's not on here right now, well, we made it removable, and it's sitting right back there. We're going to send it out and get it coated today. Now the first order of business is to install a set of selectable lockers both front and rear. And we're going to be using ARB air lockers just like in our old 85 FJ. And that's going to allow us to have true 4-wheel drive when we want it, and then we're going to be able to unlock it when we're out on the trail to make those super tight turns. Now the rear axle in the FJ is the same as the older Toyotas with an integral third member that can be removed so we can work on it on the bench. Now these FJs do have an optional electric locker in the rear from the factory, and if you want to upgrade to the ARB air locker, you're going to have to buy a brand new housing just like this one from Toyota. Now this is going to run you an additional $400, but if you have an ARB air locker in the front, you'll probably want to change out the rear to match, so you just have one compressed air source and a simplified locker setup.
Installing this doubler kit is going to make our drivetrain a lot longer, so we're going to have to modify the front cross member and make a new rear mount. Now the whole plan for this truck was to tear out the transfer case to get a more aggressive gear ratio. But that truck hasn't seen the road or the trail in only God knows how long, so the condition of the clutch is unknown. So when you're this deep into a project, it's not a big deal to tear out the transmission to go ahead and replace the clutch. The flywheel in the Saggin' Wagon is in pretty good shape with no score marks or bluing. We are installing a new center force friction disc, pressure plate, and throwout bearing.
Now our new Cruiser is an IFS truck, which means it has independent front suspension. And it's pretty common for newer light-duty trucks to have this kind of setup. Now the rear axle is a solid axle, and a solid axle swap is a pretty popular upgrade to an IFS truck. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering why, so I'll show you on the chalkboard. A solid axle underneath the front of your truck will have the axle assembly, the axle shafts, the tires and the wheels all traveling as one fixed unit. While an IFS axle has the center portion of the axle, the carrier assembly, and the interior stub shafts fixed to the truck's frame. And then the tires and wheels travel on the half shafts that go out to the wheel bearings. Now the benefit to this kind of suspension is you get a better ride. You basically have each wheel absorbing the bumps independently of each other. The downfall is you're limited to the amount of wheel travel you can get out of that axle because the CV joints reach their operating limits a lot sooner because of the shorter shaft. Now you can get long travel independent front suspensions, but it usually means you have to increase the track width of the vehicle and it costs a lot of money. Now the solid axle is basically pivoting from the center of the truck, so you can get a lot more articulation out of that vehicle off-road for a lot less money. Now the downfall to a solid axle truck is that the ride is a lot harsher. You basically have one fixed mass absorbing all the bumps. And when this tire tries to go up, because it's connected, this side over here is going to try to go down, resulting in a harsh ride inside the driver's compartment.
Now the older Landcruisers came with a solid front axle straight from the factory, but with the new Cruiser having an IFS, we can go ahead and compare the two of them together out on the trail later. Now, most trail trucks rely more on gearing than they do on horsepower, and since we kept the original 6-cylinder in the Landcruiser with just a small little EFI modification, we're definitely going to need to lower our gear ratio. And we're going to do that by installing a new lower gear set and a Colorado Off-Road Express reduction housing kit, all from Advanced Adapters. Now we're going to get that lower crawl ratio thanks to the underdrive gearing, and this adapter will allow us to adapt the front half of an MP203 transfer case as a secondary reduction box. With the range housing removed from the 203 and the transfer case off the back of the stock Landcruiser 4-speed trans, the new output shaft is installed into the range box and the Colorado Express adapter is bolted to the back of the range box. The second adapter is bolted onto the front of the range case. And depending on your transmission, you may have to install a new input gear in the 203. With the transfer case disassembled and cleaned, we will now press the bearings off the intermediate shaft and install the new low-range gears. The housing will have to be ground for clearance of the larger gears. And once the gear no longer hits the case, the new gears can be installed. Then the front half of the T-case is mounted onto the 203. And then the entire assembly can be bolted onto the back of the transmission and reinstalled into the truck.
With all these upgrades, just how trail ready will these FJs be? Stay tuned. But up next, bring lots of drinking water and a bunch of tools. Arizona desert crawling when Xtreme 4x4 continues. Time now for an Xtreme 4x4 tech tip.
As you guys know, when you get a block back from machining or just out of the junkyard, it's a great idea to pressure wash it down. Well, I thought I'd show you one of my homemade tools to make that job a little easier. Simply a 3/8 bolt welded onto an old connecting rod that came out of a junk motor. It screws into the back of the block, and that way you have a nice big hook to hook your crane to. Gravy.
Now you guys know that one of our main goals on this show is to take you to some of the most sickest off-road destinations in the US. Well, this week we're headed to Cactus Country and their annual trail days. The Arizona desert is known for some of the most extreme trails in the country.
This whole area out here is a four-wheeler's mecca.
1.5 hours north of Tucson sits an off-road classic.
Good morning. Where are we going?
Axle Alley.
Hell yeah!
Axle Alley is one of the most extreme trails out here, and it's also one of the most well-known. It's very hard on vehicles and very hard on drivers. They call it Axle Alley because of a lot of breakage of axles. Very gnarly trail.
A dry riverbed between two mountains, the trail is only 3/4 of a mile long. For most, the punishment is endless.
How far is it? 3/4 of a mile? You're out here all day.
It's pretty gnarly.
As soon as it's rolling, you hug this thing hard. Bring it up.
I better winch it.
Terrain is very, very rocky. It's brittle.
Whoa!
There's a lot of ledges and a lot of big boulders. It takes some skill to get up on them.
The ideal wheelbase is somewhere between 103 and 110 on this trail. Any longer than that, you get hung up on turns. Any shorter than that, you can't make the climbs.
As a trail leader, Michael Clinton is an expert on these rocks.
Try just sliding up it Typically you want to try to crawl it real slow. There is a couple spots on the trail where you really have to put your foot in it, but typically you really want to not have tire spin and try to crawl it.
Going pro next season, Michael used lessons learned on Axle Alley to design his competition buggy.
This is a custom-built rock buggy. Took us 2 months to build, and as far as money goes, somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000. The driving style for Arizona is unique to the area. It's 80% slow crawling and 20% put your foot in it and hold on. That 20% of the time, put our foot in it. I have a 3.4 liter Toyota motor with a supercharger. It's pushing 300 horsepower and about 360 foot-pounds of torque. Got a lot of bang for your buck on it.
Out here, it needs to be tough enough to withstand the brutality of the rocks.
The suspension travel is 14 inches in the front and 17 in the rear. We need that much travel because a lot of the stuff out here is big boulders and big crevices that you're going through. And if you don't have a tire hitting the ground with traction, you don't have any way to get up it. All of our links are 1/4 inch wall tubing. They have to be very strong. The skid plate under there is 1/4 inch. Everything on the bottom half of the drivetrain is extremely strong for these hard hits on these boulders that we drive over.
Pro rock crawling may mean fame and fortune for Michael, but he'll always come back to the Arizona desert.
It's a lot of fun coming out here and playing. It's there's nothing else in the world better to do. Get on the rocks and see if all your hard work paid off, which it does.
Now it should go without saying that if your rig isn't lifted, locked, and ready to rock, then Axle Alley's gonna swallow your junk whole.
But I'm sure if you got the gear and the guts, the Tucson Rough Riders would be more than happy to take you around their playground.
Welcome back to Xtreme 4x4, where we're well on the way of getting both of our Landcruisers ready to hit the trail later on today. Now, I've already gone ahead and finished up installing the ARB air locker into the center section of our brand new FJ. And we've shown you how to install a locker into this type of axle before, but the front end is an IFS. This is that center section that we were talking about earlier that's mounted securely to the truck's frame. And in order to get a locker or a set of gears inside this thing, you basically have to split the whole thing apart, and the procedure is a little bit different. So we're going to take you through it step by step. With the passenger side axle extension removed, the perimeter bolts on the axle housing are taken out and it's separated. Be sure not to pry on the gasket surface. The carrier will lift off with the upper half of the axle housing, and once the axle stub shaft is tapped out, the ring gear can be removed and transferred to our new ARB air locker. Then swap the side bearings from the old carrier to the new locker. Air actuator installs under the bearing race for the side bearing. Then the two halves are bolted back together. Now with our case halves bolted together, all that's left is mounting up the air locker bulkhead fitting into the housing itself and then snaking the feed tube around and feeding it out, making sure that we stay out of this synchro hub on the stub shaft. Then all we have to do is install the extension tube back onto the main housing, and the whole axle is ready to go back underneath the truck. Now we've got new switch panels going in both of our Landcruisers. In our new FJ, we had 12-volt guy make us a simple 2-switch piece to fit inside this coin holder in the center console to control our ARBs both front and rear. Now in our old Landcruiser, the stock wiring is basically junk. It's been cut on, added to, subtracted from, so we're going to completely replace the harness and control everything with another 12-volt guy switch panel. Now this is a pre-terminated switch panel with LEDs and switches to control everything from the fan, the lights, both ARBs as well as the compressor, and we can also control the winch from inside the truck.
Next, the cruiser hits the trail, extreme style. Were the modifications enough to make this cruiser survive? Stay tuned. Welcome back to Xtreme 4x4, where our team is putting the final touches on our dueling Toyotas.
Okay. All right, well, it looks like our brand new FJ is pretty much ready for the trail. What do you think, Jess?
I think it looks pretty sick. I wish I could go out with you, but unfortunately, Tommy and I are gonna stay here and finish this because it's not quite ready yet.
Well, I'll fill you in on how the day went.
Please do, have fun.
We modified our new FJ Cruiser for some serious trail duty, but not to the extent that it's impossible to drive on the street. That's why we get to drive it to the trail. Thanks to ProComp's MX suspension package and its 6 inches of lift, oh, rock slider! The intermediate trails present no problem. Now our FJ did not arrive in stock trim. Already installed, MagnaFlow catback exhaust, unit chip power chip, and an air-raid cold air intake. All in order to give us a few more ponies under the hood. Tight trails are pretty common in our area. And when we had to rub our way past trees and rocks, the exo cage protected us from body damage. On the tubes, the Line X truck bed coating held strong with no peeling. Nope. It's like we're pulling cable. Okay. Some might look at winching over an obstacle as giving up, but our objective, make it up the trail without putting our brand new FJ on its route. And since Toyota says that the FJ can ford some pretty deep water, almost up to the hood line, we had to find out for ourselves. I love mud! So there you go, a great day out on the trail, a little bit of winching and a whole lot of mud. Pretty much everything worked the way it should. And if you want to get a close-up look at this FJ Cruiser, check with your local four-wheel parts store. It's going to be making the rounds and setting up on tours. And personally, I don't even think they should clean it.